Hey there folks, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and I'm on some Insurgency Sandstorm today. We're doing the big money TDM mode, which is a little like gun game. But to be honest with you, I just wanted to talk about Insurgency, this game coming to console, and definitely the future of tactical shooters. Now Insurgency has been around for quite a while now, and it's always been sort of the gleaming beam of hope in terms of tactical shooters on Steam, and I feel like it's kind of gotten more popular as the years have gone on, and sort of hardcore, more tactical shooters have become more prominent, and even games like Call of Duty are even echoing things that Insurgency has done or is doing. And here we find ourselves with a distinct lack of these kinds of games on console, which is really surprising because when sort of elements of them do exist, they do so incredibly well. And today I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about, tactical shooters in general, hardcore shooters, and why I think they're going to end up dominating the next generation, especially on the Xbox One X or Series X. The Xbox One X, of course, isn't an old console. Whilst the Series X is probably going to be more powerful, I'm sure it's still going to stick around for a while, and I feel like it's worth mentioning as well. The PS4 Pro perhaps will show its age over the next generation. On PC, it's no surprise there are an abundance of hardcore and tactical shooters. You've got Escape from Tarkov, you've got games like Insurgency, you've got Postscriptum, Squad, Hell Let Loose, even things like Verdun. All of these crazy hardcore shooters. Verdun actually very recently became available on console, but didn't do too well because performance wasn't really a great thing. And with a new generation of console, you have a new generation of power, which makes games like these theoretically possible on consoles. For example, Squad could not run on a PS4. There is no way a game like Postscriptum or Squad could exist in PlayStation, or exist maybe even on the Xbox, just because the Xbox One X is probably the only one that would really handle it. But in general, I think it's safe to say that, this entire thing is very difficult. Like, having these really hardcore shooters that are very demanding on systems. Squad especially, I've got a 2080 Ti and a 9900K in my system, and even then I'm only breaking around 100 plus FPS here and there. Some of the maps are less optimized. And although it's on an Unreal Engine, there are some games that are incredibly difficult to transfer over to consoles due to these hardware limitations. And now that those are more or less, I wouldn't say gone, but less existent, I think we're going to see a real surge and real resurgence of consoles having these kinds of games, and for two reasons. First of all, let's talk about the obvious one. The fact that, these games are wanted. These games definitely do well on consoles. Rainbow Six Siege is one of the best console-selling games ever, and it was absolutely not intended for that kind of audience. It was expected to be a hardcore esports-style shooter for PC players, and lo and behold, it's just been incredibly successful on all platforms. Games like PUBG was not supposed to be a console success. It was no surprise that when it released on PUBG, it became PlayStation's top-selling game for 2 months, and Xbox as well became incredibly successful with PUBG. Although, performance is definitely still an issue on these consoles, and they don't really do very well, if I'm being brutally honest. PUBG did very well on console for a game that doesn't run very well on console. Lots of people would get very frustrated with that and not play it. I personally found it to be okay on the PlayStation 4 Pro, but it was definitely nowhere near the level of smoothness and clarity you see on PC. And even surprisingly recently, DayZ released on console, and that thing runs like an absolute garbage can and did really well. A lot of people own DayZ on PlayStation 4 and some on Xbox One as well. And it's really surprising, that this hasn't been addressed before. There is a clear gap in the market where there are a number of hardcore shooter players who exist on console and want to play more of these games. Every time I release a Squad video or an Insurgency video or a Postscriptum video or, just anything that isn't actively available on console stores, people say, I really wish this was on console. Escape from Tarkov as well is a great example of a game that's just absolutely killing the game right now. And there is no secret as to why most of them aren't available. I think it's a toss-up of two things. Number one, the systems simply aren't powerful enough. A base PlayStation 4 is one of the weakest PC systems available practically. Same with the Xbox One original system. Games would struggle on those systems. Insurgency Sandstorm is a very well-optimized game now, and even that, I can imagine, has been a challenge and a task to get it to run well on console systems. So it's really, really no surprise in that example. Games like Squad definitely could never run on something like a base PlayStation 4. Postscriptum, Insurgency, Armor, things like Escape from Tarkov, just downright impossible to get running on those kinds of systems. Now with this new generation, I think we're definitely going to see our consoles be upped to at least a good standard. I don't think they're going to be incredible. People love throwing around words like teraflops and so, but it means nothing until the system's actually out and you can see how it performs. I expect it to be around about the same performance as maybe like a 2060 RTX 2060 or a AMD 5600 XT, which is like a medium to lowish range card. It's the bottom end. At the very top, you've got your 2080 Ti's, you've got your 2080, 2070, 2070 Super. You've got all of these graphics cards, and I reckon around about the console entry for the new systems is going to be, admirable to say the least, but certainly nothing mind-blowing. But admirable to the extent where games like Squad, like Postscriptum, like Insurgency, like Escape from Tarkov, would be perfectly capable of running on those systems, provided they get the right controller layouts, or even better yet, if they support mouse and keyboard support, which the Xbox One X has certainly been very good at doing. Now, with all of that said, I think there's been a real discrepancy in the industry with a lot of people who produce these games not realizing that there is a huge audience for these kinds of games on console. I think a lot of them don't think it's worth their time because they don't think the game will be successful, and in some cases that has been true. For example, Verdun released on console, it didn't do very well, but ultimately that was a game that should have never released on console because of hardware limitations. With the new generation, if a game like Insurgency released on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, I have absolutely zero doubt in my mind that it would be one of the top shooters available on the platform. There is a massive hole on the console market that's basically just waiting to be filled by games like these. And whilst they do sometimes, like Squad and Insurgency and Postscriptum, have very niche audiences on PCs that look for certain types of games, I don't think these developers realize just how large that audience is on consoles. There are many, 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 many more console players than there are PC players. So even if it is a niche audience on console, you're probably still looking at like 4 times the size player base, to say the least. PC gaming is certainly something that's popular and definitely one of the predominant platforms for the future and beyond, but for the most part, there are, millions of people who own PlayStations and Xboxes when you put it together, and just having that kind of game with cross-platform servers available would be absolutely huge, and I really think it's a huge opportunity for these developers to really get a very strong financial source of income, but also provide the hole that currently exists on the console market. Insurgency is coming to console. It's going to take a while. It looks like it's going to take probably a little while longer as well. In fact, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if they waited for the Series X and the PlayStation 5 to release. I think Insurgency is a great example of a game that runs on an engine that easily can be ported over to console, that will likely do very well and should be considered a measure of success. If Insurgency goes onto console and happens to end up killing the game and getting hundreds and thousands of players, then I think all these other places should really take note of what is potentially available to them on console platforms. Anyways folks, it's been me, TheTacticalBrit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.